Zombie Army 4 Dead War is the fourth game in Rebellion Zombie Army series, and I had a lot of fun with it, although it's definitely quite different from Zombie Army Trilogy, a collection of the first three games that I had previously reviewed, but I must say that ZA4 was well worth the $4 I paid for it on sale. I'll go ahead and say for my review that I don't have a super strong computer, and as a result I had to play this title on low graphics settings with an FPS cap, but even with that, I had an absolute blast. Putting that aside, where do I begin? I guess the story, following the events of Zombie Army 1 through 3, where the leader of the Third Reich was killed after creating an army of zombies in an attempt to win World War II. He's come back to life for round 2, at an attempt of world domination, and the survivors of the zombie apocalypse stop him once and for all. A very simple story that's straight to the point, my kind of thing, I like it. Going on to discuss gameplay, I played on normal difficulty, and it's a lot different from Zombie Army Trilogy. ZAT felt like I was playing Sniper Elite with zombies, while ZA4 more felt like a third-person Left 4 Dead. Now that's not a bad thing, as I had fun, I'm just saying it's different, and it's also a lot easier than its predecessor. I think the zombies downed me 3 or 4 times in the entire game, versus easily a couple dozen times in ZAT, and I probably wouldn't have been defeated even once if ZA4 had regenerating health like ZAT does, as that's honestly about the only thing that really made ZA4 even sort of challenging, the medkit system. Instead of regenerating health, you have to find other ways to heal up, and I must say that Dead War got pretty creative here. Sure, you can carry a med kit and find more sometimes in levels and in between levels, but there are other ways to patch yourself up, like throwing a divine grenade on the ground and standing in its healing juice, reaching a 50 combo to regain some HP if you have that perk, or the most common way you'll heal, on the go, a new feature called takedowns, or as I called them, executions. Executions are charged by reaching a 10-kill combo, and you press A, using an Xbox controller, near a Z to pull off a one-hit kill, which restores 20% of your health, I believe. Being honest, this was kinda more fun than just a basic med kit or regenerating health system, as you really had to use your noggin a bit when considering how to approach a situation. That and executions look sick. That's probably the single biggest mechanic difference between ZAT and 4, but also I just found Dead War to be easier. Not really sure how to explain it, but it just wasn't as hard, comparing the two games on normal difficulty. I mean, maybe it's because I had experience from Trilogy and that's why, but I remember dying a couple times at the first big horde on ZA1, and I didn't even break a sweat on Dead War until maybe the 8th chapter, which is really late in the game. Maybe zombies just weren't as aggressive. What I can say for sure, though, is that special zombies were overall easier to deal with, like the machine gunner. Not too big of a deal on ZA4, but that monster was a pain and a half on the Trilogy. Same thing for the chainsaw zombie/butcher. I panicked when I saw that dude on ZA3, because I knew I was in for a big fight with a bullet sponge. On Dead War, it was more like, oh, there's a butcher, I should probably take him out. I don't know, man, maybe it's just me, but the Trilogy felt like there was a lot more pressure on me and more challenging, and I really struggled at some parts. And then I just soared through Dead War and didn't really struggle until the tail end of the game. Although undoubtedly, it was definitely easier to keep a combo going on Dead War, as on Trilogy, if you miss a single shot or take damage, you lose your combo, but you can generally miss at least one shot and still hold a combo on ZA4, and receiving damage has no impact on the combo meter. Now, of course, I could have turned up the difficulty, but I generally like to review games on the normal difficulty, but I might go back and do a harder playthrough for myself at some point.
Guess I'm on a roll.
Another thing I kinda noticed is that ZA4 seemed to try to push you into more close corner scenarios versus ZAT. Instead of sniping a horde that's lumbering towards you and using melee kicks and secondary weapons when the horde closes in on you, ZA4 just seemed to have smaller areas and a lot less sniping, especially long distance shots, which is one of the reasons I said it felt more like Left 4 Dead than Sniper Elite. Was there some sniping hordes as they slowly walk towards you? Definitely, just not as much. On a somewhat similar topic, I guess, you know those sweet, disgusting, yet awesome X-ray shots that Sniper Elite is known for? They seemed way less frequent on ZA4 versus Trilogy. Maybe I just wasn't shooting the right places, but they just weren't as common. Moving on to some other major changes, powers and the upgrade system. These were not present on ZAT if my memory serves me right, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about these, as I think they both added to and took away from the series. ZAT had a more dark and grim feel, and then on ZA4, you're running around with an electrified shotgun that can slow time. Like, yeah, it's fun with stuff like your shotgun getting electric shots, or your rifle being able to send out an explosive bullet every now and then, but it almost seemed to take away from the grim nature of Trilogy. There were also special melee attacks, which I guess were kinda powers. You unlocked new melee weapons as you progressed, and you had a machete, which dealt heavy damage to a single enemy, an electric fist, which one-hit a single zombie and stunned nearby Zeds, a divine hammer, which did something, and you had a flaming axe, which I didn't really use that much. Of the four, the electric fist was my favorite, and special melee attacks charge up with time. Normal melee attacks were weapon bashes and stomps, which didn't seem as effective as the kicks on Trilogy. Now, on to weapon upgrades. ZA4 offered 3 upgrade paths for each weapon, with things like being able to hold more rounds in a clip or increasing damage, with you being able to hold 3 perks to each tier, and the third perk being split into 2 paths for you to choose, and you can find upgrade kits scattered around levels, which you use to improve your firearms. And on the topic of weapons, I largely used the free DLC repeater rifle, trench gun, and Colt M1911 pistol, although I did mess around with some other weapons, and you can unlock skins if you want to customize your gun's appearance a bit. Alright, a relevant thing to discuss next are perks, something that was not on ZAT. Perks can be things like giving you a health boost or increasing damage dealt by friendly NPCs, and you unlock new perks and perk slots by earning XP and leveling up your character. So ZA4 had a lot of new features and customizable options that weren't around in prior installments, which I appreciated, but it also took away from the difficulty a bit, although I overall like the new additions. There were also new grenades tossed into the game. If my memory serves me right, the Trilogy only had more realistic grenades, like frag grenades, normal mines, stuff like that. But ZA4 had bait grenades, which distracted Zeds, like COD Zombie Monkey Bombs, a electric grenades, which deal shock damage to a horde of the undead. You also had fire nades and divine nades, which, like I mentioned earlier, you can toss them on the ground and stand in the divine puddle to heal, although I'm not entirely sure what they do to the Zeeks. But probably my favorite new explosives were the artillery strikes, where you shoot a flare gun on the ground, and Allied forces bring the pain by, well, launching artillery in that area, although of course these couldn't be used indoors and they were uncommon. Oh yeah, a couple more things about weapons. You can sometimes find attachments for your firearms, like an explosive attachment or a fire attachment, allowing your next 15 rounds, I think, to do special damage. A nice addition, but again, they overall made the game easier. And you could also pick up special weapons from enemies, being the machine gun, flamethrower, and buzzsaw. The flamethrower and MG were gratefully accepted, although I didn't agree with the buzzsaw and used it literally only once, but it was always fun ripping through the undead with a big ol' machine gun. With your arsenal discussed, how about shifting gears to talk about enemy variety, which I briefly mentioned earlier. ZA4 seemed to have a bigger variety than ZAT, with Zeds like the normal walkers and self-exploding zombies returning. Am I allowed to call them by their real name on here? I don't know. And there were many new additions, like creepers, who walked around like, and look, a lot like Gollum from The Lord of the Rings. Also added to the list of hostiles were sniper zombies with rocket launchers, medic zombies who wield a machete and drop med kits, swamp zombies who spew goo on you, zombie tanks, something I was not expecting, tanks that are some sort of disgusting living zombie creature tank combo, and they take a few shots to kill. There were a few other new Zeds, like Blind Screamers, who did a crap ton of damage and took more than a couple shots to kill, but they could be avoided if you just didn't want to deal with them.
That's enough out of you.
Or Grenadiers, who hid behind shields and chucked nades at you, although the skeletons were definitely missing. Not sure why they randomly got pulled out from the roster. I kinda enjoyed battling them on ZAT. Oh well, maybe Rebellion wanted to stay true to the name Zombie Army and only have you battle Zeeks, but no, that doesn't make sense as you can also kill rats and birds. I don't know, but no skeletons. As far as bosses go, not a lot going on here. A small Adolf boss, shortly followed by an actual boss fight, where he has a massive zombie tank that you must take out, followed by a section where he spawns in a bunch of zombie clones for you to decimate, and then you kill him, ending the war once and for all. Okay, what's next? Level design maybe? ZAT was a bit more straightforward, with pretty much every level being get from point A to B, with safe rooms in between each level for you to resupply your goodies. And while Dead War largely followed this, it also added a lot of objectives, with things like having to move fuel canisters while only being able to use your pistol, filling blood fountains by getting kills in a certain area, but of course, some levels were just get from point A to B while battling Zeds, although I should probably mention that every level has optional challenges, being stuff like finish the level in X minutes, or get 10 executions, just stuff which granted you extra XP. In addition to that, each level had various optional side objectives, like looking for documents, saving civilians, or finding and killing zombie hands that just randomly got tossed in. I guess that largely sums up gameplay. There's a bit to discuss, no doubt, but another thing I took note of is that the horror elements seem to be toned down a wee bit. Were they still present? Yes, with things like the creepy dolls you can shoot, and I'm still not entirely sure what they did, but at no point in this game would I say I was really that scared, versus ZAT having me worried I might crap my pants at some points, like in the creepy Führer's bunker or the possessed forest level. Maybe I've just built up a bigger resistance to horror since I played ZAT, but it did really seem toned down. Honestly, this whole game just kind of felt toned down compared to the trilogy. Is it more advanced? Sure, with things like the upgrade system, special melee attacks, etc. But just the horror elements and difficulty just weren't really there as strong compared to ZAT. Is that necessarily a bad thing? No, it's nice to have a more chill, laid-back experience at times. It just wasn't fully what I was expecting. My guess is that ZA4 was Rebellion's attempt at trying to attract a more casual audience, which a lot of game companies have kind of been trying to do, but at least it worked in this case, I guess, versus something like Dead or Alive 6, a not successful attempt to mainstream that series, which has always held a more niche audience. Some final notes before my grade. The controller support worked just fine. The voice acting was great. Your characters now talk, by the way, which was nice. The soundtrack was alright. Performance-wise, I already noted that I don't have a very strong PC, but I only encountered 2 glitches off the top of my head, one in which I survived a horde, but just wasn't allowed to progress, so I had to restart the checkpoint and try again. The other was something really minor, but 2 glitches in a 13-hour title? That's not bad. Oh, there also is a horde survival mode, which I played once, and I had some fun with it. In conclusion, I think I give Zombie Army 4 Dead War an 8 out of 10 by my grade scale. Well worth the $4 I paid for it. I think ZA4 was definitely a nice addition to the series, just very different from Trilogy. Now that being said, some similar games you might enjoy if you liked Dead War would be Killing Floor 2, or any of the first 3 Call of Duty zombie games, all of which are first-person zombie horde shooters that I've sank a crap ton of time into. And I guess that wrapped things up from me for today. Thanks for watching. I hope someone enjoyed my video. And for any newcomers to my channel, I mostly play, review, and discuss zombie and horror games, so feel free to check out some of my other content if that maybe sounds interesting. I hope everyone has a great day. Always remember that Jesus loves you all very much. Take it easy out there, y'all. Peace.